Peace and love. This is Travis Sellers, an emerging doctor in family and marriage therapy, here to share some experiences in becoming a doctor and also sharing some thoughts on how to be, really good at marriages, really good in relationships, showing up as the best self. Um, yeah, so I want to, continue the conversation that I was having about what it would be like if you were going to the NBA, if relationships are going to the NBA, what would it take to get you there? What will it take to keep you there, right? So these are the steps that are essential into getting you there. One of the things that we talked about, some of the skills, I think a little bit too prematurely. And I wanted to just circle back to some concepts of, I think that you really need to, even if you are, as we're pointing out, interested in knowing more about relationships as a young person, because you're going to experience love interests, sexual desires, sexual attractions. So that's natural and that's normal. When you're married or you're trying to be married right now, same thing is happening, the same dynamics. Or even if you are married and you're, struggling and you want to redial. So we have to go tap back into the basic skills, just like you would if you were, you know, an athlete. I always like to discuss things on athletic terms because it's just, I was an athlete, student athlete. So it's the most common and easiest way to really explain it and to use the comparison that generates pretty much the same ongoing maintenance and practice, right? So the first thing, as you would, and I think this is an extra step when it comes to relationships and trying to be emotionally intelligent. I think the first thing we need to do is I want us to think about what it is that we think of love. And if we have varying ideas about it, I just want to offer what I really find it very important to at least give a measure of how love looks like, according to M. Scott Peck, one of the psychologists that I, borrow a lot of ideas of my early ideas from, and I still hold on to some of those things as I'm growing into the field, because I think, as a student, when you are in this process, especially as I found out that I'm an adult learner, so as an adult learner you have other ideas, other things that you learn over a period of time that are influencing your thoughts and how you approach things. So the same thing with love. I mean, even at any age, you have some concept of what that is. People told you what it is. Some people show you or think they're showing you what love is. We have some idea, but let's just begin to define it in a way where we can think back on it and hold it as a measure of what love is, not only for yourself, but for others. Because it's an interesting thing. Listen to the definition. The definition of love is the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing your own or another's spiritual growth and development. Ooh. So, I mean, it may not sound much to you, but I think it's important because the key words are the will to extend, right? And for the purpose. So that means that your efforts are for the purpose of another key word, which is nurturing, helping something. Imagine a flower or or a plant that you have in your home that you're watching grow. You're nurturing, you're feeding that plant, that child. Even if you look at it as a child, you're feeding that child to grow and develop, protection, all those things. You have to be able to do that for yourself. And I think that is the key thing, is knowing when you are loving yourself. It's when you're involved in any activity or engagement as it relates to relationship. You're involved in any relationship, you can begin to think, is my engagement with this person or people, is this an act of love for myself? So it's really about the self first. You have to have these concerns for the self first. So say, what's the first steps? Same thing in like any sport. In any sport, the thing that you want to consider first is, how am I showing up? Am I skilled? Am I willing? Do I really want this practice to take on the grind of it, the expectations, the everyday maintenance of the practice? Am I willing to do that? So when you're in a relationship, or you're developing a relationship with a person, um, as a young person, you want to be able to say, to be able to show up, to say to yourself, like, I'm showing up for my purpose of loving myself. So when I'm engaged, it's a development. I'm growing. It's a point of growth for me. I'm having fun. I'm having good conversations. The person I'm with can accept me, can accept some good advice that I offer them. I can accept good advice that they're offering me. They accept what I'm doing in terms of my growth. They accept that I have practice, or they accept that I'm studying. They accept that I'm trying to work towards a, building a career, building financial stability. Someone, that is what you consider love for self. I mean, if you want to use those measures, but those are parts, as you thinking, these are growth marks, right? And if you are married and you're having some difficulties, you want to find, am I doing things where I'm growing? Am I nurturing my own growth, where I'm in this relationship growing? It has nothing really to do with the next person. This has something to do with you. And if you're emotionally growing in the relationship, and how you're showing up, and what will do you have to continue working on nurturing your own growth, your spiritual growth and development inside a relationship? What that looks like is, let's say if I have a situation where we have disagreements, and we're coming to the point where we're arguing, uh, and having difficult times with arguing, calling each other names, and it's becoming explosive. The first thing you want to think after a situation like that, you want to think, am I showing my self love first? Is this self love? Is this something that I'm showing up and I'm loving myself? Is this spiritual growth? And that's the first check. These are the first things that you have to be able to show yourself, is that will to love your own self. And once you're able to do that for yourself, then now you can really love someone else. But if you can't show up for someone else, I mean, if you can't show up for yourself, you can't do it for someone else. It's almost impossible. But I will say that I don't want you to mistake that as, for example, if you're already in a relationship and there's some difficulties, and you're like, oh man, I can't love myself, so now I need to break up with you because I'm not loving myself. That's not it. That's not what that looks like. So what that looks like is, if I'm in a relationship and I'm feeling like I'm not loving myself, now you begin to do things and take steps towards correcting your behavior, so you can move towards a more loving position for yourself, things that are more growth oriented towards yourself. That can look like if you're arguing a lot, instead of being judgmental to your partner or to your loved ones, maybe you're not. Maybe you can hold off the judgment. That's the first step because that's not growth and development. Being judgmental, we know that's not love. Being judgmental of someone else is not really loving yourself for one thing because you're jumping to conclusions. You're not really investigating properly. So you really are not showing your own self love. And if there's some lying, so if you're lying to your partner, not really being honest with your partner, that really is not something against them. That's something against your own self and your own spiritual growth and development. So you want to work on being more honest. That doesn't mean that you're honest to the point where you're hurting someone's feelings. And that's another discussion. Um, you should be able to speak your truth, as we talked about before, with some empathy. Remember, I talked about that before. We're going to get back into the skill sets, but we want you to start beginning to think about where I am with loving myself. That's the first fundamental step um, towards getting into the big leagues of marriage. It's, am I loving myself? Do I have the will to love myself? And then I can do it for someone else. And you have to do it for yourself first. And it's going to show up a little bit different if you are in the relationship. It's going to it's going to, re examining and assessing and trying to get back. It's going to show up differently how that manifests in your relationship. Um, it doesn't mean that you have to, kill the relationship to, begin to work out, right? Doesn't mean that you have to end everything to, begin to work out on yourself. That's want that to be clear to, those out there. That just means that I'm working out. I'm going to be more aware. Um, and those are the first steps. And if you feel that you connect with these ideas, or if you disagree with these ideas and you want to share some more, let me know in the comments. And next time I'll talk a little bit more about the once you're able to love, what that growth looks like. What is that spiritual growth and development? What does it really? How does it really manifest in your behaviors and how you interact with loved ones or love interests? So next time, we'll talk about that. And remember, like these our posts, subscribe to it, and share them with others. So like and subscribe, have those things that will help my growth and development. So until next time, peace and love.